Welcome to This Explainer. It's pretty wild to think about. How exactly does a man go from being the absolute greatest hero of a revolution to its most universally hated villain? Today, we're taking a deep dive into a man whose very name literally became the ultimate American insult. And honestly, this isn't just some simple spy story. It's a fascinating look at ego, crushing debt, and a secret deal that very nearly ended the United States before it even officially got off the ground. It really proves that sometimes the most dangerous threat isn't the enemy outside, but the completely unappreciated top performer on the inside. We're going to see exactly how the eagle of the Continental Army was perfectly willing to let the American dream burn to the ground, all for a bag of British gold.
So how exactly does a hero break bad? Well, to figure that out, we really have to look at the pressure cooker of his early career. George Washington absolutely loved this guy. The American troops adored him. He was a battlefield titan. Yet, he made this incredibly calculated choice to basically clip his own wings and sell out his brothers in arms. It's just a stunning, mind-boggling reversal of loyalty.
Okay, let's jump into Section 1, the fighting general.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this betrayal, you first have to realize that Arnold was practically invincible. In the early war, he was totally unmatched. They called him the Eagle, and he was widely considered Washington's absolute best fighting officer. Take the Battle of Saratoga, for example. Arnold actually ignored direct orders to just sit quietly in his tent. Instead, he charges right into the thick of the fight, leading this desperate assault that entirely broke the British lines. But, he paid a massive physical price for it, taking a musket ball that utterly shattered an already wounded leg. And it was right after this, during his agonizing, miserable hospital recovery, that the very first seeds of betrayal were planted.
You can just feel the growing divide fueled by his resentment here. It's like a recipe for disaster. On one hand, you have Arnold's immense sacrifices. We're talking a shattered leg and his own personal fortune spent to fund the war effort. Then on the exact opposite side, you have the Continental Congress's actions. While Arnold lay bleeding for his country in a hospital bed, Congress was literally busy promoting lesser generals right over his head. Men who hadn't done even half the work he had. Plus, they were unbelievably slow to repay the personal debts he took on for the military. Imagine funding a massive project out of your own pocket, literally breaking your leg to get it done, only to watch management promote the guy who just sat safely in the office. Yeah, that's exactly how Arnold felt.
Moving right along to Section 2, Pride, Debt, and Peggy.
So, trying to do his favorite general a solid, Washington makes Arnold the military governor of Philadelphia. And on paper, it sounds like a great reward. In reality, absolute disaster. Arnold immediately falls victim to massive lifestyle creep. He lived like an absolute king. He bought this ridiculously expensive carriage, threw these lavish, over-the-top 18th century ballroom parties, and moved into a massive mansion. The tiny little problem? He absolutely could not afford any of it. His wounded ego demanded status, and that demand quickly sank him into a crushing, inescapable mountain of debt.
And right smack in the middle of this financial chaos, enter Peggy Shippen. Now, Peggy was a young, incredibly beautiful woman from a very wealthy Philadelphia family. But here is the absolutely critical detail. Her family actually harbored secret loyalties to the British. So Peggy didn't just capture Arnold's heart, she basically became an echo chamber for his resentment. She used her high society connections to take his simmering anger and point it in a completely new, highly dangerous direction.
So by 1779, Arnold is just done. He's entirely done with what he viewed as these ungrateful Americans. Using Peggy's network, he opens up a secret line of communication with the enemy. And he doesn't hold back. He demands 20,000 pounds, which, to put that into perspective, is the equivalent of millions of dollars today, just to clear his massive debts and let him live in luxury. Plus, he demanded a high-ranking commission in the British Army. He quite literally put a price tag on his soul.
Which brings us to Section 3, the West Point Plot.
Now, the British didn't just want to buy a disgruntled general. For that kind of money, they wanted a massive strategic prize in return. So Arnold sets his sights on delivering West Point. And at the time, we're not talking about a military academy. This was the single most important fortress in America. It sat up on this high bluff perfectly overlooking the Hudson River. If the British could capture West Point, they'd control the entire river, which would effectively slice the American colonies entirely in half. It was literally known as the key to the continent. And losing it would have been a rapid, devastating knockout blow to the whole Revolutionary War. To actually pull this off, Arnold leverages Washington's immense trust to get himself appointed as the commander of West Point. And once he's inside, he doesn't, attack his own men. He uses quiet, bureaucratic sabotage. It was betrayal by neglect. First off, he purposefully lets the fortress's physical defenses just crumble into disrepair.
Second, he intentionally thins out his own forces by sending troops away on completely unnecessary errands. And third, and honestly, this is probably the most malicious part, he orders his men to stop repairing the massive, heavy iron chain that was specifically strung across the river to block British ships. He was quietly unlocking the front door for the enemy.
The timeline of treason really accelerates here. After opening communications in 1779, the whole thing culminates in September of 1780. Arnold literally sneaks out into the woods in the dead of night to have this incredibly tense, face-to-face meeting with British Major John Andre. Right there in the dark, Arnold hands over secret maps of the fort and explicit written instructions on exactly how to capture it. The deal was officially struck. The American Revolution was literally just days away from being smothered in its sleep by its most celebrated hero.
And that leads us to Section 4, a traitor unmasked. But as fate would have it, the entire plot falls apart thanks to one massive, unbelievable blunder. After securing the maps, Major Andre has to get back to British lines. But instead of wearing his uniform, he tries to sneak back disguised in civilian clothes. Along the way, he just happens to be stopped by 3 nervous American militiamen. Andre panics a little bit and attempts to bribe them to let him pass, but the militiamen actually refuse the money. His obvious nervousness makes them super suspicious, so they decide to conduct a really thorough search. They check his coat, his pockets, his saddle, and they find absolutely nothing.
Just as they're about to let the guy walk away, one of the militiamen says those incredibly fateful words, "Take off your boots." And there it is. Hidden deep inside the stocking of Andre's left foot were the crumpled secret maps of West Point, clearly signed by none other than General Benedict Arnold. In an absolute instant, the treason was completely exposed.
Meanwhile, back at West Point, Arnold gets frantic word that Andre has been captured, and the timing is just crazy. He gets this message literally minutes before George Washington himself is scheduled to arrive at the fort for a surprise inspection. Realizing the noose is tightening, Arnold doesn't even hesitate. He abandons his wife Peggy and his young baby, jumps on the nearest horse, and desperately rows out into the Hudson River to a waiting British warship, which was aptly named the Vulture. He manages to escape with his life, but his reputation, dead forever. Shortly after Arnold flees, Washington arrives and is handed the intercepted papers. Seeing those maps and the undeniable signature of his favorite, most trusted fighting officer, while the stoic George Washington reportedly broke down, wept, and uttered this absolutely heartbreaking realization: whom can we trust now? I mean, what a devastating psychological blow to the American command.
So, what actually became of the traitor? Well, in the immediate aftermath, Arnold's name became a permanent scar on American history. His reputation was completely obliterated. He eventually made his way over to London for his later years. And yeah, sure, he got his money and he got his shiny red British uniform, but he died completely ignored and forgotten by the very empire he had tried to save. Why? Because nobody, not even the enemy, trusts a traitor.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, really provocative historical debate. Was Benedict Arnold simply a cold-blooded, greedy traitor from the very beginning, or was he genuinely a great hero who was just pushed too far by an ungrateful government that completely refused to acknowledge his blood and sacrifice? It's a fascinating question about a guy who proved that the heavy burden of loyalty can sometimes be dropped the exact moment the price is right. Think about how that applies even today, right? When we talk about recognition, ego, and the real limits of loyalty. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring all the fascinating nuances of our history.